You know, you look at these pictures, they look almost like normal people. They're devils. There's something in human flesh, because how you could sit there and know what's happening to people there and enjoy.
The photographs this Auschwitz survivor talks about are part of a disturbing collection in which you can see the officers in charge of the Holocaust on vacation. They looked like ordinary men, toasting and smiling, resting from the brutal task of annihilating thousands of people. The soundtrack to their recreation was the screams of the victims who, after long hardships, were eliminated in the gas chambers. The nauseating aroma of corpses buried in mass graves completed the scene. The question is, how could the Nazis live a happy life in the middle of hell? In this new and shocking installment of military history, we will try to answer that question through disturbing files captured by those very people responsible for those war crimes. Get ready to go on vacation with the SS of the Third Reich.
When I first saw the photographs, I got goosebumps. And I remember thinking, you know, many of the people in my family died in Auschwitz. And these are the people who were doing it. And they don't seem to have any remorse.
Although in our eyes Auschwitz is synonymous with horror and inhumanity, for the thousands of German soldiers who lived there, it was little more than an office where they carried out a special job. They paid tribute to the greatness of their country, contributing to the purifying cause of the Third Reich. It is because of this lack of connection with reality that in numerous photographs and records, we can see several Nazis enjoying their stay in the extermination camp, almost as if it were a simple holiday at a resort. Much of what we know about the free time of SS officers comes to us through photographic compilations taken by the soldiers themselves, who seem to want to keep a memory of that time. Among all the records made inside Auschwitz, there is one that stands out for the variety and power of the images, which belonged to Camp Chief Karl Höcker. The photo album was found by an unidentified American counterintelligence officer who was housed in Frankfurt after Germany's surrender in 1945. He discovered the valuable document in an apartment and brought it back to the United States. In January 2007, the American officer donated the material to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum with the request that his identity not be revealed.
December 2006, I received a letter in the mail. This gentleman, who requested to remain anonymous, wrote to the museum and said that he had World War II era photographs in his possession that he thought we might be interested in. He believed the pictures, and he wrote in this letter that he believed the pictures to be taken in and around Auschwitz, Poland.
For years, the only significant collection of photographs of the camp had been taken in 1942, when Heinrich Himmler, one of Adolf Hitler's closest collaborators, made his inspection visit. The addition of Höcker's photographs to the historical discourse was particularly valuable. In these plates, a new dimension of the murderers' work was revealed, particularly their daily life and how they coped with being part of a mass extermination. The question is, how can one understand the events of the Holocaust without looking at the perpetrators of the crimes? The days of the Auschwitz staff, as illustrated in Höcker's album, generally seemed happy and homely, filled with parties, reunions, and toasts to the health of the Reich. The photographs, many of them taken between the summer and Christmas of 1944, show that even to the very end, when Germany's defeat already seemed inevitable, SS officers had time for fun. The men in Hooker's photographs do not appear to be sadistic animals, but good soldiers taking a break from their hard work. Of course, their job was to torture, rape, and annihilate innocent people, whom they humiliated 6 days a week. Despite the large amount of evidence against him, Hooker consistently denied committing any acts of cruelty during the Auschwitz trial, regarding the time when the captures were taken. Historian Joe White gives a terrifying context for the Auschwitz II camp, also known as Birkenau.
By this point, at least in terms of Birkenau's killing capacity, it reached its apex. And the killing capacity was so expanded that for body disposal, they were beginning to use open pit cremation beyond the crematories.
Similarly, Rudolf Höss, the commandant of Auschwitz, maintained in his autobiography that despite his central role in the final solution, he was a moral and decent person with no bad intentions. In his book, the Nazi leader wrote, "The general public simply continues to see me as a bloodthirsty beast, the cruel sadist, the murderer of millions, because the masses cannot conceive of the commandant of Auschwitz in any other way. They could never understand that he also had a heart, and that he was not evil." How these men reconciled two sides of their lives and their personalities remains one of the most disturbing and unanswered questions of the Holocaust. For this reason, this album is such a shocking and fascinating document that gave an intimate glimpse into the hearts of the beasts. Some of the most amazing plaques were captured at Solohuta, a small secret resort located just 30 kilometers from Auschwitz, on the banks of the Sola River. Historical records reveal that the SS rewarded its most exceptional officers, those who performed their job with great effectiveness and who demonstrated an almost messianic loyalty to Adolf Hitler. The fruit of this effort was a fully paid trip to Solohuta, where they could spend days of rest in a beautiful natural setting to return refreshed from their daily yoke of eliminating thousands of people. Let us listen to one of those in charge of preserving the album, recounting the aesthetic characteristics that its owner gave it.
His photographs are arranged very carefully. He's got themes to his pages and very carefully handwritten captions. And he's in some of the photographs. There's Carl Hooker.
These photographs supported other SS documents vital to the historical reconstruction of the Holocaust era. Polish historian Danuta Czech has published daily accounts based on this information. These include, for example, that on August 18th, 1944, Officer Johann Antoni and Private Hans Kartusch of the 3rd Guard Company at Auschwitz were given special 8-day leave to go to the Solohuta Recreation Center. The reason? Recognition for their exceptional performance as murderers and for their role in controlling a prisoner uprising that had taken place in the early months of that year. But Solohuta was not only for lower-ranking members. It was also attended by top officers of high rank who would meet there to drink a few drinks and make important decisions about the future of the Holocaust and the functioning of this murderous machinery. One of the most impressive photos shows an accordionist playing and singing for about 70 SS men. They are all smiling. They are happily enjoying the show. Among the faces, you can make out important subjects such as Carl Hooker, Rudolf Höss, Richard Baer, Franz Hössler, among many others, about whom we will tell you in detail later.
Now, the front row of the album, to me, is the most interesting because it's the hierarchy, but they're all in a row, they're all lined up, they're all smiling and laughing at this sing-along. I mean, at the end of one of the most horrific periods of murder in one place in human history. It's astonishing, the photograph.
Despite his fundamental role in the operation of Auschwitz, this is one of the few captures that document the presence of Dr. Mengele at the site. Within the SS photo albums, many pages are dedicated to the travels of the Helferinnen, the female auxiliaries of the group, young women who answered the calls and wrote the messages of the officers. On July 22, 1944, they were sent to spend a few days of rest in Solohuda. And their day was accompanied by the sound of accordionists and the jokes of their superiors. Less than a year later, Germany was defeated by the Allies, and the Soviet Union planted its flag in Berlin, putting an end to the Third Reich. While the war was heading towards an absolute failure, in the extermination camps the military elites celebrated and took trips. That was the level of disconnection that was managed towards the end of the conflict. Inside one of the albums there is also a 6-page section entitled Hier gibt es Blaubeeren. Here are blueberries, which roughly translates as Here are blueberries, in which Karl Hucker is seen passing a bowl of fresh fruit to some girls. As if in a theater scene, when they finished eating, some of the girls put on their best faces of disappointment at the lack of blueberries. Expressions rehearsed for the camera, barely a joke in a day full of fun. That same day, a few kilometers away, 150 Jewish prisoners were transported to Auschwitz. The SS selected 21 men and 12 women for forced labor. The rest were sent to the infamous showers, gas chambers prepared to annihilate dozens of people in a matter of seconds.
And this is what was actually going on in Auschwitz. This is the reality of the situation, not this world of fun.
Other photographs were taken during a ceremony held on September 1st, 1944. The date commemorating the inauguration of the SS military hospital, located at the entrance to Birkenau. The festivities included an honor guard and the official presentation of the facilities by Dr. Enno Lolling, a longtime Nazi collaborator in the medical field. Dozens of officers, including several from scientific branches, were present on that day. The nurses came in their complete and impeccable uniforms. It was a party that, in the eyes of the Third Reich, deserved to be documented for the memory. The incredible thing is that the album also includes photos taken after the SS hospital was bombed and destroyed by the Allies in December 1944. In that attack, 5 soldiers and collaborator health personnel died. The photos record moments probably from the same day that the coup carried out by brave Allied pilots occurred. These snapshots are a window into a tumultuous and little-studied time in the Reich, the weeks before the mass evacuations of the concentration camps, when it was already clear that the Soviet Union would bring down the major cities within months. After the bombing, the Auschwitz authorities organized a full burial service that included marching band music, wreath-laying, words of pride, and the raising of flags. That afternoon, they showed respect for their dead that had never been seen in the years in which this murderous machine operated.
I really think that the album in the coming years will be of great interest to people who study the psychology of genocide and the psychology of perpetrators, because it's really astonishing that they can do this. And that's one of the things that's really difficult about this album and raises so many questions, because they don't look evil in this album. They look like normal people, like you and I, and that how does a person get to that point where the mass killing is socially acceptable? And
before continuing, it is important to know the administrative organization of the place. The leader of the SS, Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler, was the highest-ranking officer with knowledge of Auschwitz. and the role that the camp played in the dark mission of exterminating the Jewish people. It was known that Himmler gave direct orders to the camp commander without going through all the other chains of command, meaning that his directives had a direct impact on what happened inside that hell. Himmler also received from time to time extensive instructions from Adolf Hitler or Hermann Göring, which he then interpreted as he saw fit and passed them on to the commander of the Auschwitz camp. This shows that there were no secret plans or ignorance. Every level of the Third Reich knew what was happening there, and they consciously chose to collaborate and enjoy their stays there. This is how Hans Friedrich, a simple soldier of that force, remembers the extermination process.
Die waren ja dermaßen geschockt und verängstigt. Mit denen konnten sie machen, was sie wollten.
Below Himmler, the highest-ranking operational commander was SS Obergruppenführer Oswald Pohl, who served as head of the SS Central Economic and Administrative Office. Pohl's subordinate, Richard Glucks, was the department head of the concentration camps inspectorate, known as Department D. Glucks can be seen as the direct superior of the Auschwitz camp commander, Rudolf Höss. In addition to this direct chain of command, Auschwitz's geographic location meant that some of its war supply functions fell under the authority of regional SS and Nazi party leaders. When the camp was first built, it was located within the borders of the newly established general government, under the control of Hans Frank, a high-ranking official in Nazi Germany. Before Auschwitz was an extermination camp, Frank left the administration of this death industry to members of the SS, delegating all responsibility and approval that came with doing so. At the same time, all SS activities at Auschwitz were under the authority of the Chief of Police and SS, who, for most of the camp's existence, was Friedrich Wilhelm Krüger. This was, in broad strokes, the organization of this space of death. Now let's continue with the infamous records of his work. While Hucker's album is one of the most disturbing, it is not the only such material to come to light. In recent years, several similar records have captivated historians and descendants of victims. In January 2020, a presentation of truly incredible photographs was held at the Topography of Terror Foundation in Berlin. On the occasion of the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, screenshots taken in two sister extermination camps were displayed, Sobibor and Belzec. What is shocking about these snapshots is the normality with which the Nazis and their assistants spent their leisure time. They are seen with their wives drinking beer, posing in a group with their weapons in hand or smiling while listening to the music of an accordion. Memories for the family album, knowing that just a few meters away thousands of people died every day in a process of annihilation without equal.
Die Sammlung bietet wirklich einen Quantensprung in der visuellen Überlieferung zu nationalsozialistischen Massenverbrechen.
At least 167,000 Jews were gassed in Sobibor in just 17 months. Belzec, also in occupied Poland, was close to the Trzewinki training camp, where the Nazis trained around 5,000 Soviet civilians and prisoners of war as auxiliaries, who were then deployed in Jewish ghettos and extermination camps. However, this dark work seems not to have dampened the spirits of the Germans, who took advantage of every day off to celebrate and toast the health of the Third Reich. The photos were made available to German and American historians by the grandson of Johann Niemann, the SS commander at Sobibor. He found them in the attic of the family home, and they come from several terrible albums, preserved as if they were simple family memories. Commenting on the nature of the material, historian Andreas Karr from the Stanislav Hunts Center said, It is painful to see how SS officers would sit around drinking wine or beer surrounded by corpses, or wearing sunglasses stolen from the victims. The latter was very common, with the murderers taking the few belongings the prisoners had. They would then parade around at parties and birthday parties dressed in these items. Let us hear the testimony of a descendant of Sobibor victims and her impression of seeing the photographs.
And to see the pictures of how it was during the war, it was amazing. I could see what my grandparents saw when they arrived in Sobibor. And it is very difficult to say in words what they did to me, but in a way I became part of this history.
The most incredible thing is that the photos document Niemann's participation in the so-called Operation Reinhard, the secret SS plan to annihilate the Jews of occupied Poland. Niemann was sent there in 1942 as a sergeant to the Belzec extermination camp, and, given his willingness to continue killing, was promoted to one of the posts in the camp's command. He was efficient in his role, but this did not save him from dying in October 1943, in the revolt carried out by the approximately 600 prisoners who remained in Sobibor, an uprising that is still awaiting its place in history, and in which more than a dozen Nazi officers and auxiliary guards died. The events leading up to his execution are fascinating and give a clear indication of the fighting spirit of the inmates. Commander Niemann was invited by the prisoners to the tailor's hut, with the promise that they would make him a leather jacket. Upon arrival, his head was cut off. Unfortunately, Niemann was not accompanied by a photographer to capture the moment when the prisoners took his measurements, so unfortunately, the album was not completed with the best of the plates. One of the photographs from the presentation in January 2020 shows an officer walking towards the gas chambers in Sobibor, next to the barracks where women were forced to shave their heads and then be sexually abused by their captors. In others, a group of guards are seen lying on the ground next to their weapons. Niemann riding a horse next to the ramp used to move the landed Jews from the trains to the gas chambers, shirtless officers sharing a few beers in a courtyard they named Casino. For them, going to work was like attending an unlimited amusement park, where they had the power and authority to end thousands of lives at will. From the present, it is difficult to imagine how Auschwitz could have been anything other than a dark place where millions of people were led to their annihilation. Surprisingly, for the German soldiers, that hell was their office, with the comforts and entertainment of any other workplace. They smiled, joked, and in many cases celebrated, while just a few meters away, one of the most repugnant massacres in history was taking place. Thus, we come to the end of a video full of cruelty, but also of a frivolity that is disturbing. If you like this type of analysis and want to know more about the private lives of the criminals of the Third Reich, we invite you to subscribe and activate the notifications of our channel. Without further ado, we say goodbye until the next installment of Military History.